He gets to smile every time.
I'm a smiling guy.
YouTube, what is going on? DA Comics and JP Creations here, back with another episode of Webheads Comic Club. How long has it been since our last episode?
You said, what, 10 months?
Yeah, like 10 months, I think. I think we left off last episode. We were like, yep, we'll be back next week, read these issues, and then we just didn't.
Honestly, we gave the viewers 10 months to catch up.
Yeah.
If they haven't, sadly, that's on you.
You had 10 months to watch 9 episodes, so, you know.
Yeah, you could. That's definitely dope.
Yeah, and to read through the, obviously, Steve Ditko era, which we wrapped up with episode 8, not issue 8. But yeah, we're back. We've been meaning to start this back up again for a little while now. We've been talking about it, trying to figure it out, and then, I don't know about you, but definitely the thing that really kind of motivated me to jump back into it was the recent passing of John Romita.
Right, which is very sad at the age of 93, right?
He lived a long and successful life.
It's honestly, it's hard to talk about how impactful, like, to put into words how impactful, like, he was on Spider-Man. Because, like, to me at least, when I think of Spider-Man, I think of his artwork.
Yeah.
And when I think of Spider-Man characters, I think of his artwork. So to me, his artwork is Spider-Man. It is the Spider-Man universe. So it's just kind of like...
You can't, like, obviously you can't take away, like, Steve Ditko's impact on Spider-Man, obviously. But, like, when John Romita took over the series, I feel like that's when Spider-Man really, like, elevated to legend status.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, yeah, he passed away recently, and we just began John Romita's arc on Amazing Spider-Man right before we kind of went on this hiatus on the podcast. So I was like, we got to get back and dive back in because I'm ready to read some of those books and see his legendary art. I mean, just a perfect example. This is maybe a kind of a weird like thing, but when a perfect example of how iconic John Romita's art is, when Stan Lee passed away, I posted the cover to issue 50 being like, oh, rest in peace, like Stan Lee. So it's like his art is so like hand in hand with Spider-Man that like I used that to be like, oh, Stan Lee, you know. So
exactly, he's definitely my favorite Spider-Man artist of all time, and for me personally,
I
know you like what, Bagley?
Favorite, yeah, Mark Bagley's probably we won't get to him for at this rate, 10 years, but
well, if we take another 10 months, yeah, we're done for, brother.
We'll get to Mark Bagley in in retirement age, but yeah, no, John Romita is definitely a legend. But
I mean, the majority of covers you got back there are all Romita.
Got Romita. This one is signed by Romita. You can't really. I don't know if you can see that one on the camera, but definitely. I mean, my wall of fame over here. John Romita's 3 out of 5 of them.
You got one Bagley thing there, so I would assume you're a fake fan.
Oh yeah.
That's signed though, right?
Yeah, signed by him.
I have a Bagley signature that is like not confirmed Bagley, but it's just.
But
who fakes a bag? Who fakes a Mark Bagley?
Yeah, no one. But yeah, so we changed it up a little bit. I don't know what issues in the last episode. Like, if you're watching this down the line and you just watched episode 9, we probably said at the end of that episode what issues we were reading, and that probably changed. So this episode we're diving into issues 41, 42, and 43.
That is correct.
We kind of wanted to cut it back a little bit to the amount of issues we were doing per episode because we felt like it was just becoming a lot per episode and a lot of reading, and these books are dense.
Yeah, and I also think this, subject, it's better to have it to like a 45-minute hour episode for our viewers, It's nice. I think it's...
Yeah. So we're shooting for like 45-ish minutes per episode. If you're watching this, you can look at the timestamp and probably see whether we succeed or fail on that goal.
It probably says 2.5 hours. And we just shot it.
It's like 4 hours, and we're opening the video with like, yeah, we're trying to cut it short.
Cut it short, yeah. And also like focus a little more on storylines, because especially I was looking forward at what we're going to be reading and talking about, and there's a lot of like 3-issue, 4-issue like storylines. Where like Doc Ock appears for 3 issues, or the Lizard appears for 2 issues, or what have you. The Vulture appears for 3 issues.
Yeah, this episode's a perfect example because these 3 issues it felt like a little trilogy. I mean, I didn't realize that they were so connected for these 3. it kind of seems like when John Romita hopped on the book, they started trying to do more multi-issue storylines. I don't know if that's just a coincidence, but I don't know. But
connected, all three connected very well, and then sets up the next two a little bit at the end there. So
it does, and we will dive right into it. So let's get it started. Amazing Spider-Man 41. I believe you have this book. As always, every episode we show what comics we actually have collected and own for ourselves. So he has 41. Breaks my heart.
I don't remember where I got this, when I got this, or how much I paid.
It's one of those books you've had for a while.
I don't even think I had it for that long. I just don't remember where I got this. You know what? I can look back in the archives probably somewhere and figure out exactly how much I paid for it.
It's true.
When I got it and what its story is, but
41 is one of those books that, like, from the moment I started collecting Silver Age Spider-Man books, I was like, I want 41. I really like Rhino as a villain, and I just never got my hands on one. And now it's super expensive.
Oh, especially now with that trailer. Craven. Wait, that will be a 2.5 hour. We cannot.
We're not diving down that route. I just saw that today, actually. So
yeah, you know what we should do? Once that Sinister Six comes out, when it's like all B and C villains with no Spider-Man in it, somehow we should just like do a movie marathon.
Yeah.
You know.
Anyway, before I lose all faith in the Spider-Man universe of movies. So we kind of alluded to it already. This issue 41 is obviously the first appearance of the Rhino. That's kind of the biggest thing that it is. And he actually appears in all three of these issues today. But the biggest, to summarize this book, if you haven't read it, which we, of course, recommend you go and read it for yourself first, before we kind of give our thoughts on it. But real quick summary of kind of the major plot points of this issue. Peter buys a motorcycle, but it's like an electric bike kind of thing, or motorized bike. Betty Brant returns, and her and Peter have a very awkward run-in. J. Jonah Jameson's son, the astronaut, is back, and there's some kind of shenanigans going on with him. And then, of course, Rhino comes crashing in. Him and Spider-Man fight, and also towards the end of this issue, after the awkward run-in with Betty Brant, Peter kind of sees Gwen Stacy for the first time.
Which, is that really the first time he saw Gwen Stacy?
It's the first time he really acknowledged interest in her.
I feel like he has before, though. Maybe the first time he's noticed.
Yeah, first time he's noticed, but that's at the end of the issue. So going back and giving our thoughts from the beginning, my first impression when I cracked into this book, that first page, man, that is a novel.
Dude, that's why when we're talking about it's like takes 45 minutes. Listen, I'm a slow reader, okay? I am not, a fast reader by any means. But it takes me like 45 minutes to read one of these issues.
I'm like, look, Stan, I love you. You're just rambling on and on. And
dude, it's like, insane.
I think it really shows how far comics have come, in the sense that, like, the amount of unnecessary narration and, like, thought bubbles and things, like, I feel like this was before comics really picked up on the whole show don't tell concept of storytelling.
Right.
Where it's like, you read a comic now and you'll have an entire page with like 4 lines of text, and this has just paragraphs on
it's
one
kind of
page.
Funny in the fifth panel, he says, after struggling through the last 4 panels, you can be sure of one thing: our story cannot possibly move any slower. It's like, you know what you're doing.
He acknowledged, and even in the beginning, he's like, most superhero books start with action, but not us. We have these 2 old ladies talking.
That's a classic Stan thing to say at this point. He's going to come and be like, listen, we're going to have action, but right now, we got to talk about one thing, and that's Ant-Man.
And I don't even mind the, like, dialogue, but it's like, you don't have to point it out, Stan. Like, I don't know, he's just trying to be self-aware.
I mean, it's because I guess it's still supposed to be targeted to just kids at this point. So, you want to keep them in line, I guess?
Well, that's the thing. So, I was recently watching, I don't know if you saw it, but a documentary came out on Stan Lee on Disney+. And I was watching that, and basically, like, when Marvel had their whole, like, rebranding to, like, start doing superhero comics, Stan was like, we are going to write these comics at collegiate reading level.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, "What are you talking about?" Right? Comics are always written for like kids, and he was like, "No, we're gonna like," and that's why you'll notice that he uses words with like 3 syllables and things like that, which you wouldn't see in comics at the time. And I feel like it shows when you read these books, and it's kind of dense. I actually have a hard time following what they're saying.
I mean,
sometimes.
I'll be the first to admit it. Sometimes I gotta whip out the dictionary because I don't know what the hell this guy is talking about.
Some of it is outdated slang as well.
I think that's what it is. Usually, I'm like, what does that mean? And I like look it up. I'm like, oh, it's like some weird slang from the '60s.
Like, we'll really dive into the weird slang when we get to Mary Jane later, because oh my god.
Okay, that was the most jarring thing I've ever seen in my life. We'll talk about it when it gets to issue 43. But in this issue, I think we've talked about it a lot through the first 40 issues that Sam Raimi literally took like direct aspects from these early issues and put them into his movies. Obviously, the bike is one of them, and then the way J. Jonah Jameson acts is with the heart medication or the blood pressure medication. It is right, and stuff like that. It's just straight from. Well, it's not straight from the movie. The movie's straight from the comics, but for me, it's backwards. So pretty great. It's pretty awesome to see.
J. Jonah Jameson continues to be just like my favorite side character.
I know.
Because
I can't. He's a main character.
It shows you how well that J.K. Simmons, right?
Yeah.
It shows you how well that he did playing him in the Spider-Man movies, because when I'm reading him in this comic, I just read it in J.K. Simmons' voice. And it's like, it's 1-for-1, like you said, the like blood pressure and all of that. It's like the exact same character, and he's just so funny.
He played him so well that literally anytime they have someone in a live action or even in an animated like movie voice him or play him, it's him. So
which is the right choice. No one else could play him.
100%. Yeah, so a lot more Sam Raimi stuff going on in here, and then we get pretty quickly to Rhino's first appearance after J. Jonah Jameson is talking to his son about Spider-Man and how much he hates Spider-Man, but Jameson his son appreciates him for saving his life. Obviously, he's gonna spin. JJ's gonna spin it in, Spider-Man and set it all up. He's throwing darts at a Spider-Man picture. I mean, that's a classic. And then we kind of flick to Rhino's first appearance, with him stomping through the border, which is not what I expected.
Yeah, that Mexican border, man.
If I definitely probably read this book when I was younger. I don't remember it at all. If you gave me $1 million, I would not expect the first appearance of Rhino to be him stomping through the Mexican border.
Yeah, I'm like, why was he in Mexico?
Because he is Russian, right?
Yeah, he's Russian.
I guess he decided to get over that way, but
I guess I don't know. I was surprised because I had never read this issue before, and I was obviously familiar with Rhino's like origin. I know he ends up being kind of like stuck in the suit type of thing.
Yeah.
I was surprised by how that goes in this, but him just cutting to him stomping across the border was like not how I imagined him first appearing. And there's almost no dialogue from him other than like, I think he says he's going to New York or whatever.
If he's going to New York.
And he just stomps through the border patrol, and like we come to learn that he's going to New York because he's trying to get John Jameson because he has some spores from outer space, which this is obviously foreshadowing. Well, I don't know if it is foreshadowing, but knowing the future of Spider-Man comics, John ends up becoming Man-Wolf, right?
Man-Wolf, yeah.
Is this connected to that? I don't really know the
So
history
I was going to bring
there.
that up too, because if you look, and we'll get it to issue 42, I think it's the same suit. Man-Wolf wears the same suit. I looked it up. First I was like, this is very similar looking to the Man-Wolf suit. And I looked it up and I was correct.
Okay, yeah, because I don't know a lot of the history of Man-Wolf, so as soon as they started talking about, like, space spores on John or whatever, I was like, oh, this is going to lead to his transformation.
My guess is that since that's, like, in like the 120s or 130s, maybe?
Yeah.
I think his first appearance. I'm going to guess that they took what issue 42 did and ran with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But,
yeah, so bullets can't stop the Rhino, and if I had $1 for every time that is said in these 3 issues, I would be a millionaire. Constantly reminded that he is indestructible.
You could play a drinking game for take a shot every time they say that my bullets won't hurt him. Every time Peter says, man, if I had an apartment.
Yep.
And you would die by the end of reading these 3 comics.
So that's one other thing in these issues is that Peter wants to get an apartment but won't because of Aunt May.
It's a classic, like, oh, I want an apartment, but who's going to stay with Aunt May? And then, meanwhile, Aunt May's being invited to move in with, what's-her-face, Watson, Anna.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, I'd love to, but I can't because what about Peter? Like, they both kind of, like, it would work out perfectly, but they're not communicating. They're a little out of sync.
Yeah. And they won't talk to each other about it because they're so just like, yeah, that's 100% a fact, is that she wants me here, so I have to, and I should stay here with her, and he, needs to, who's going to take care of him if he doesn't live here?
Yeah, because, we all know Peter's so frail and can't take care of himself.
Which, again, she continues to mention that he just lives a, dull and boring life, pretty much. I think she says, not those exact words, but Rhino smashes through everything in his way. He is actually super strong. So it's a suit that is pretty much, like, glued to this guy.
Pretty much, yeah. Like,
and gives him the power of a rhinoceros. We don't get his origin until issue 43, but in, like, issue 41, Spider-Man's like, if only I knew his origin, like, I'd be able to... It's like, all right. So I'm guessing we'll get to that.
He says that, and then I think, like, the police say it in, like, issue 42, when they're, like, trying to keep him in prison. They're like, man, if we knew his origin...
If we knew his origin
People
story.
don't talk like that.
No way anybody's saying that. So obviously, since Rhino's trying to go after JJ's son because of the spores, he makes contact with Spider-Man. They have their big fight, and Spider-Man's big idea, since Rhino's obviously much stronger than him, is just to tire him out, because his punches don't hurt him at all, don't knock him back at all. His webbings do nothing.
If you've ever played a Spider-Man video game and had to fight the Rhino, this is the comic where they got that fight idea from.
100%.
Where it's like, oh, I have to dodge to the side, so he'll smack into the wall and tire himself out. Like, I was reading it and I was like, oh, yep, this is how he always beats the Rhino. I guess this is how it started. But I do want to mention, while the Rhino's great, in the middle of this fighting sequence, there is the whole bit with Betty Brant. Now, I like the Rhino as a villain. I felt like in these issues, he wasn't that interesting. For me, what really sold these issues to me was the more soap opera elements of Spider-Man comics, with, like, Betty Brant and Gwen and Mary Jane. And specifically this scene, we talked about it when it happened, when it seemed like Peter and Betty were, like, done. And this issue is basically him solidifying that and being like, oh yeah, I don't really like Betty anymore, and they, like, meet up and it's super awkward, I guess. And there was, like, one page devoted to that. It wasn't a whole lot of the story, but it was just Peter and Betty kind of being, like, awkward and obviously kind of fallen out of interest.
I think it's pretty cool too, because it shows also, like, a very big gap in time too, because it's been years obviously across these couple issues now,
which it doesn't feel like it, but it has.
No, not at all. But it's been, like, a couple of years. It's stated, I think, in these issues, like, oh yeah, when JJ's son's talking about when he saved him, he's like a couple of years back. You know what I mean? So
yeah, which I guess in real time, it's probably been, like, what, 5 years at this point?
5 years? Damn, you think it's been that long?
I think so. I mean, actually more than that, because wait, when did this issue come out? Let's look here.
Well, I guess it makes sense in terms of him going from high school to college.
It's been 3 years in real time.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, 2.
Yeah.
But that doesn't make much sense.
But yeah, so that's kind of, like, the 3 major plot lines that are established in this issue is, like, the Rhino, obviously, John Jameson and the spores, which that's kind of connected with the Rhino, and then Betty, and Gwen and all of that. And so it kind of cuts in between all of those, kind of building up. For me, I don't know. Every time I would cut to the Rhino, I was kind of bored. Like, I feel like these old action sequences, they kind of become a bit samey.
And he's one of those classic, like, I'm big and dumb, I guess, so that's going to be another element, which I never liked. I thought it's overdone, obviously, at this point in time, where we currently are, but even with this, some of the stuff was... I liked it, but I don't like big dumb characters. I get nothing from it.
It's good, and obviously, knowing it for the time and all of that, but I feel like at this point we're 40 issues in, and we're still kind of just having the, like, oh man, there's a villain, well, I'm Spider-Man. Like, the novelty's kind of worn off for me in that sense. and I'm waiting for it to get to a little bit deeper storytelling, which I know it will.
Which it definitely is. You see that, like I said, in every
They're
other
starting to
section that's not the
work
Rhino.
on it. Yeah, they're like starting, like they're having longer narratives and more characterization, and like I'm excited to watch that transition because I definitely enjoy the more modern style of comic book than like the classic. Just from a reading perspective.
I'm also really excited to continue to see the evolution of some of these characters, like to continue to see the evolution of Rhino, not only in 43, but whenever he appears again, which I don't even know when it is.
Yeah.
It's going to be fun to read.
When does he appear again?
I have to look at it because I was looking at the covers from like this to like 100, and I did not see him in the cover at least. But granted, I didn't think he was going to be in issue 42 at all. Anyways.
Yeah. Another big takeaway that I'm kind of noticing as I'm flipping through 41 here. Something I noticed a lot, and I don't know if this is John Romita or if this is the letterer. I don't know the word for it, but like the splash words, the buzzwords, the sound effects.
Yeah.
They really just went buck wild with those.
They're huge.
I feel like I really noticed them a lot more. And Spider-Man, like, kind of acknowledging them a few times.
Yeah,
where he was like,
weird.
Part of the reason I do this job is so I can just hear the wacky sound effects. And it's like, pow! And then at one point he, like, says what the sound effect is. And it just, like, felt really, like, meta. I don't know.
Well, it was kind of cool with the Rhino, at least, because whenever he runs, they do stomp, stomp, stomp. And there's just this big stomp, like, all over the panel. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and they just have all these, like, action shots of, like, I'm looking and seeing a few of them. We have Thrump, Walk, Brack, Batum, Bach, when he gets kicked in the face. So that's definitely... But yeah, the big stomps, I just feel like... I assume it's the letterer. I feel like he knocked it out of the park with some of these, because they're just, like, very... I don't know, very classic. I love it.
I think it's pretty cool, especially with a big character like the Rhino, all these big sound effects.
Yeah.
I do like that. Even with JJ, like, pounds his fist at the end of the issue, and it does a thump.
Yeah.
Which I don't think I've seen yet.
He's thumping even harder than ever.
He's thumping around.
But yeah,
even after, so he defeats the Rhino by tiring him out,
right?
Pretty much. Saves JJ, son, because obviously the Rhino went and captured him and tried to take him back to his homeland or wherever he was going to take him. And Jameson came back and said it's still Spider-Man's fault. Once again, he's still a menace.
Hasn't changed.
He can do no good.
It will be interesting because we had that whole, I forget what issue it was, where we kind of dived into the like psychology of JJ.
I think it was the issue with the Spider Slayer. Like the second appearance of Spider Slayer. It was the 20s, yeah. The yellow with him on the
I think
robot,
it's
that
25.
issue. Whatever, I think it's 25 as well.
But yeah, I mean, we talked about it a lot in that episode where like they really dived into the psychology of JJ and like why he hates Spider-Man, and I hope that we explore that more soon, because as much as I enjoy JJ, it's like at some point it's kind of the same thing over and over again. So I hope we kind of get a little bit more depth there. He's
getting funnier though, and he's getting more entertaining, I feel like.
I think Stan's getting kind of more comfortable writing him.
Yeah, so it's fun. At the end of the issue, we see some more Gwen and Peter and Harry and Flash, but the real thing that gets me excited is when they finally make a date to meet Mary Jane.
Now I know you're excited to meet Mary Jane. I'm excited about Gwen Stacy, personally. Like, Mary Jane's great. We'll talk about her, because she gets weird. But this is where Peter first starts kind of catching a vibe for Gwen. Now, Peter being the womanizing 60s man that he is, you know, he's just crushing on all the ladies. But specifically, like, here, he's thinking about how he's moved on past Betty, and he's like, I think specifically he says, where is it? Was I ever so wrapped up in Betty that I couldn't see this living pinup under my nose?
Living pinup. You gotta love it. I also like in this entire issue, he sees Betty, and then throughout the whole issue, he goes, I haven't even thought of Betty. I haven't even thought of Betty. You keep saying like I haven't even thought of her. It's like you keep thinking about her, saying you haven't thought about her.
Trying
It's
to
kind of
convince
funny.
himself a little bit. I feel like Stan was really just trying to drive home like Betty Brant
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
Setting up for obviously in the next couple issues, but yeah, I don't know. I'm like I have a basic understanding of Peter and MJ's history. I'm interested to see him and Gwen's because I've read very little of the comics with him
Me too.
dating Gwen. So like I'm interested to see like when does he actually like ask her out? When do they actually start kind of dating? Like what's the
Why does he choose her over, I guess, Mary Jane, or even
Mhm.
I guess you can say Betty Brant, but we already know it's kind of over and done with. So
right? So I'm
yeah, it's gonna be
interested to
cool to
see.
see. It's gonna be very fun to see. But right now, she's still at the stage where she's like doesn't know if she likes him or not.
She knows
Sometimes, yeah, but she's kind of like to herself. She's like, you know, almost like he's like too cocky at some points.
a little bit. I mean, she has that one moment where she's like, Peter Parker, what on earth has changed you so?
Right.
And his thought bubble is, those eyes, those lips, she's too much.
She's still drawing very interestingly. Obviously, at this point, I think Romita's trying to mimic Dicko's art
Right.
because I know he tried to do that for a while after. Seen him say in a couple interviews. So she still looks a little very different.
Different than
Very
what we
interesting.
know her as.
Right. He doesn't have that headband yet.
Mm-hmm.
Just much more, I guess, sharp looking face and
A little meaner looking.
yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um. So we'll see when that kind of changes because that must just change like on a dime.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Or one day she
So
just decides to wear a headband.
I hope he goes and you have a headband on today. Like I hope he mentions it.
But yeah, that pretty much wraps up issue 41. I liked this issue, but I would say it sets up the story for the next couple issues, which I think I liked more.
I would agree, 100%. I didn't think I was gonna really be too interested in 42, and I was very interested in 42.
Yeah, I was surprised by that one. I thought this one was going to be like the best one, and I would argue it's probably the worst, not worst, but like the least exciting one of the three.
100%.
I don't know if we're still ranking them, but
I think we'll do it at the end. We rank them at the end, but I
okay.
think I would like to guess yours
Venture a
at the end.
guess at the end or right now?
Well, I can take a guess right now.
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, this is gonna be hard actually. I want to do it at the end because I want to. Okay, right now I can change it. Okay, you tell me at the end. But right now I'm gonna take a stab at it, and I'm gonna say 42, 43, 41.
Okay.
But I feel like at the end of it, it's gonna be 43, 42.
Well, let's see. Let's
But
dive into
I'm
the next one.
yes, issue 42, which is the birth of a superhero,
Mm-hmm.
and the cover shows J. Jonah Jameson. What's his J? Oh, Colonel Jameson. That's pretty much what they call him.
John,
Does he
yeah,
have a name?
John.
John Jameson, right? John Jameson.
Yeah.
'Cause I keep saying JJ's son. John
He
Jameson.
really went for the
Colonel
alliteration. It's like J. Jonah Jameson and John Jameson.
Him punching Spidey in some weird suit. And can I tell you, for my whole entire life, I didn't know this was John Jameson on the cover.
Yeah, I didn't put that together either until I started reading this and what was happening. I was like, oh.
Even then, I just never put two and two together. I never like, oh wait, that's John Jameson.
I mean, it doesn't really look like. I mean, it's just
Him.
kind of a generic white guy. Like,
Yeah, exactly. This could be three of the other Spider-Man villains we met so far.
yeah.
Well, anyway, in this issue, give a little synopsis for you guys. We pretty much continue to follow the three topics we've been talking about. We see the effects on the spores on JJ. Finally, obviously, we've been talked about it a lot in 41. We see how that ends up turning out. We see the doctors and officials dealing with the aftermath of issue 41 with the Rhino, and we have the first appearance of Mary Jane, as well as some more Betty Brant and Gwen Stacy stuff going on. So, part 2 of this 3-part story we got going. It's building.
A very good issue. As always, from our personal comic collections, I have my issue 42. I believe you have one as well.
I do.
Yours is probably in a little bit nicer condition, it looks like. Mine's a bit rough, you can
Oh,
see.
mine seems like it has like a minor. I don't know if that's a tape pull or someone like tried to watch the comic book.
Mine does have one interesting fun fact from comic collecting for any novice collectors out there. So mine, you'll see, has a crease right down the middle of it. And I remember when I bought that as a kid, the guy at the shop explained to me that crease is from when people used to have like subscriptions to a book and they would mail them each new issue. They would fold the comic in half and rubber band it and ship it that way. And so if you ever see like that crease down the middle, that's because someone had it like as a subscription, and that's just kind of how it got done that way. I don't know if that's 100% true, but that's what I was told. And
that's what I've heard as well. The subscription crease. That's what they call it.
Yeah. So
it's honestly pretty cool if that is what that is. You know, you have a book from a dedicated Spider-Man fan.
That's why, yeah, I don't mind that type of damage, because I'm like, it adds to the story of the book.
That and like the, you know, when you see stamps, like date stamps, whatever those stamps are.
I love date stamps. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, fun comic collecting fact. But yeah,
Again,
you pretty much covered
the
story.
Don't know where I got this. Don't know how much I paid for it, and don't know. I don't know.
I think I got this from a store.
I think I got this from John. I feel like I have it. I feel like I got this from
That
John.
kind of sounds right, yeah.
Lee Kirby Ditko Comics. Anybody who knows him, he's still around making videos.
Yeah, shout out.
We used to do a lot of trades and purchases through him, and I believe, if I remember correctly, maybe 41 is as well.
Maybe, I don't.
These 2 issues might be from him. He is obviously watching right now, so if you want to leave a comment down below, you can. Let me know.
He's our biggest fan, of course.
I'm sure he's watching and remembers exactly the books he sold to me about 6 years ago.
Yep.
Probably longer than that.
Yeah, if we could actually get an itemized invoice, that would be great.
Yeah, that would be great. So put that down below.
No, I know exactly what I got from him. I got my issue 3. And my 50. We were talking about John Romita. My issue 50 from him.
I got my 2 from him.
Yeah, his comic collection is insane. We're showing the comics we have. You want to see an insane comic book collection, you go check out Lee Kirby.
That's just ridiculous. Yeah, that's ridiculous.
But yeah, you pretty much covered the story of this issue. It starts off. What I liked about this issue is it started with the very first scene was Spider-Man robbing a bank, and it kind of did the whole like, oh, what's going on here? Well, I guess we'll have to find out over the course of the story.
Yeah.
And that actually intrigued me more than I thought it would, to be honest. Like, I was actually kind of like, oh, what's going on here? Let's see where this goes.
So yeah, it starts with him literally robbing a bank and then throwing the bag into the, I don't know what type of river or water that is, but
yeah.
And then just goes straight to the story. So like that's just like, hey, this is a little thing we're gonna explain later. It doesn't really have anything to do with the story itself.
Well, it is kind of the hook to get John. Basically, John's spores make him super strong, and then he goes. Everyone thinks Spider-Man robbed a bank, so John is like, J. Jonah Jameson convinces John to like go stop him as a superhero. And so that's its only real involvement in the story, but like contextually, it's so out of nowhere when it happens, which is
one thing we didn't mention as well is this whole time John Jameson has like security guards around him at all times to not only watch him to see if the spores do anything to him, but protect him from people like the Rhino or anybody else who wants to get their hands on him.
Which they did a horrible job of.
They did absolutely. Let me think. They did nothing.
Yeah.
They helped not at all.
No, not at all.
0 times that they help. They literally just were there to be like, oh God, something's happening, or we can't stop the Rhino. Here he comes.
Our bullets can't do anything to him.
No, the bullets will not do anything to him.
Which every time they say that, I'm just like, there's a big face hole in his hide. Like,
okay, so I literally put a note on this. In this issue, we see a couple, maybe a page of like the Rhino stuff going on, page or 2.
Mm-hmm.
They're sedating, so they have him in like custody, pretty much, and they're like trying to sedate him, or like they know he's gonna wake up soon. They're not gonna be able to contain him. So they like, maybe we should like sedate him, and they're like, well, I can't get this needle through his thick hide. It's like there's a big face. Just stick him in the cheek, in his forehead.
I'm looking at that panel right now. They're looking at his face, and they're like, nothing can pierce that skin of his. It's like,
and he's just like sleeping.
It's like, first of all, yeah, sleeping gas. You guys have that idea later. Why didn't you start with that? And second of all, again, like, they just keep shooting their guns, and they're like, they can't pierce his hide. I'm like, aim for the head. Like, did you learn nothing from Thanos? Come on.
The big square hole.
It's just, I don't know. It's a silly comic book. I can't take it too seriously, but like, it just felt kind of silly that they're like, his hide is impenetrable, and I'm like, his face is right there.
Yeah, it's actually it's very comical, but he escapes, and he's like, I'm off to the races. But then they have the sleeping gas pretty much, and they knock him back out.
He escapes as he's being assigned his lawyer, Foggy Nelson,
which is pretty cool.
Yeah, a little crossover there. What was the other? There was like 2 crossovers in these books. I'm trying to remember.
It was Daredevil.
No, yeah, Daredevil and Foggy, but then wasn't there another character?
I don't think so.
Huh? I don't know. I feel like I remember, but yeah, Foggy Nelson just shows up, which I guess they were like, we need a lawyer, so we'll just throw him in.
It is interesting that they got Foggy and not Daredevil to do it, but
well, they said Matt Murdock is out of town in Daredevil 21.
Oh, okay, I don't remember that.
So, but yeah, Rhino tries to escape. They get him with sleeping gas, and then they're like, he'll develop an immunity, which is exactly what he does. Not how tranquilizers work, but I'm sure Stan didn't understand that. Maybe we didn't understand that back in the 60s. I don't know.
Well, in this universe, I guess that's how it works.
Yep.
It's going to be the new thing in this universe. I mean, it was the 60s.
Yep.
I mean, come on.
It was the 60s, but somehow Peter only ages 10 years before.
Wasn't that our catchphrase the past, 8 episodes? I forget, it's been 10 months, but didn't some whack stuff happen? It's
mostly for their dialogue. They'll say something weird, and we're just like, "Hey, man, that's the '60s," which we'll get to that.
So, John Jameson, right? The spores, they finally have effect on him. He becomes just insanely strong, so strong that he can't stop his body from moving forward and breaking through walls and things of that nature. So, they use Stark tech.
Right? That was the other crossover, yeah.
Stark, yeah.
Tony Stark, yes.
Tony Stark engineers. I don't think him himself. They make a suit in just a couple hours to pretty much weigh him down. Still super strong, still insanely tough, and Jack now huge, but under control.
Yep. Apparently the spores were from Jupiter, where gravity is heavier.
Right, that's what it was. Is that gravity is heavy there? So
they're like it's evolved to be stronger because of Jupiter's gravity. I'm like, they're spores. They don't need strength. Like.
He'd be a normal guy on Jupiter, so if you put him back there, all our problems are solved.
That's basically what happened, yeah. Now, I want to shout out the next scene here. Gwen Stacy is wearing a headband. We just talked about this, and I just looked down. She's wearing her headband. And she has one of my favorite moments of Gwen Stacy so far, where she's talking to Flash, and she goes, "Don't worry, my fatuous friend." And Flash just goes, "Fatuous?" Like, with question marks, and she's like, "Forget it," and like moves on. Like, she says some big, like, smart, like, I don't know if fatuous is a word. I don't know what it means. So I kind of related with Flash there.
There's one of those words where I had to look up. I don't remember what I have the dictionary. I have a little dictionary app for these moments.
I could figure it out from context clues.
Yeah,
like,
right.
But I just loved him being like, "Fatuous," and she's like, "Forget it. Like, you're too stupid to understand."
Foolish or insane.
There you go.
Especially in an unconscious, complicit manner. Silly.
So yeah, I like that she kind of got that dig in on Flash. That was good. And then immediately after that, John jumps Spider-Man and they fight. And again, it's kind of the same old classic comic book action at this point, where they're fighting. Spider-Man's throwing his one-liners. His one-liners are funny. I think actually one of his one-liners in these books was like actually made me laugh out loud. I'm trying to see if I can find it.
Yeah, well, a lot of this has the same stuff as the Rhino. He, tries to web him, snaps the webs. He misses a hit, but then he hits one. It's like, he's so strong. Oh my god! It's it is the same type of stuff, but I still enjoy it. The art's amazing, obviously, John Romita.
Right.
I really, really like his art. I mean, it is definitely different from Ditko's, even though he's trying to mimic Ditko, and I can kind of see that in some things, but you can tell that like Spider-Man's getting is much more muscular than he was in those first 38 issues.
It's a lot. His art is a lot more consistent too.
That's 100. Yeah, clean.
Like,
It looks a little like I don't know if cleaner is the right word, but
it is. It's like you said, clearly mimicking Ditko's style, but like Ditko, we pointed out there were some panels where we were like, "What the heck is going on?" There?
yeah, right.
Like Spider-Man had legs going in wrong directions. John Romita's feels a little bit more like consistent, and it, like the bodies all look functioning.
Yeah, exactly. So they have this big old fight. It's the same old thing. Wham, pam, boom. Thank you, ma'am. He's really, really tough. Spider-Man's dodging him, and he finally gets him into this chemical plant or
It's what is it?
just a lab of some sort. Chemical plant of some sort, and he gets him in between these two machines that shock him with an electromagnetic field. Well, no, he has an electromagnetic field built into his suit, and it causes a feedback with the generator, and it just snaps him right back into normal John Jameson. The spores out of his system.
Which this is probably the moment that they'll end up coming back to and being like, that actually made them turn, into the man-wolf slowly or whatever.
Yeah,
But yeah, at the time it's just like, oh, he's cured now. The end. Which this reminded me a lot of issue 38. You remember the like movie actor that got like shocked on set and then like roided out? It's kind of the same thing. He's just kind of roided out and aggressive and like fighting.
But he's better now because of the electromagnetic field in his suit.
Right, of course.
Generator. And then we get to the last page, the moment we've all been waiting for, the Sunday dinner.
We talked about it leading up to this, the amount of times Peter was like, oh, I bet she's going to be ugly. And he had some good ones in this book. He goes, he's like, I'm less excited to meet Mary Jane than I am the Hulk. And she probably looks like him, too.
Also, Peter almost forgets about the dinner as well. He's laying in bed like, I can't wait to do nothing on Sunday. I'm going to just chill out. I'm going to do this. And May's like, you're not even ready yet? What are you doing? He's like, I'm just chilling out. I'm going to get ready soon. Don't worry about it. I could never forget about that. But he's literally... Peter and Aunt May show up to Miss Watson's house. They're waiting for MJ to arrive because she has her own apartment, which is a big thing.
Right.
And Peter's thinking about Gwen, how he just can't get her out of mind recently, and there's a ring at the door.
I have to point out one thing on this page.
Mm-hmm.
This is the nitpicker within me. On the last page of this issue, if you look at the first two panels, Peter's tie is yellow, and then his tie is red.
Oh, it's the inker right there. We gotta get at him.
That's just, I noticed that, and if I was living back in 1966 or whenever this was, I'm sending a letter.
I would send a letter, yeah.
And you'll probably see it in a couple of, there'll probably be a letter in there like, his tie changed colors, and Stan's gonna be like,
what can you do? You can't do everything. Come on.
He's like, silly Peter, he changed ties between panels, like some joke like that.
Yeah.
But you've been building up to the moment.
Right. There's a ring at the door. Miss Watson opens the door and says, Peter, I'd like you to meet my niece. A beautiful shocked face in two panels, one close up from the side, as we see full face Mary Jane. Obviously the classic line, face a tiger, you just hit the jackpot. And that's it. Next, the Rhino.
This panel hurt me a little bit.
Why is that? Let me see.
Given the current state of Spider-Man comics.
Oh yeah, that's all I could think about this whole entire next issue.
This panel hurt me because this is such a moment in Spider-Man history. This is the moment, like, no one disagrees. Like, as much as we're talking about wanting to see Gwen Stacy and Black Cat and all this stuff, Mary Jane is the Lois Lane to Spider-Man's Superman. Like,
yep.
She is his love interest, his soulmate, his end-all be-all partner. And so seeing the beginning of that and knowing how historic that moment is, and then seeing how horribly they've fumbled the bag with the current Spider-Man comics.
Yeah, that's pretty horrible. But
it's rough.
What do you think about how she looks? How she's drawn here?
I mean, you got the classic black sleeveless tee.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she's always wearing that. She got the bangs. Does she always have bangs?
I don't think so. Oh yeah, I think she has bangs.
I think maybe she loses those later, but for right now, you know.
Well, in the issue 300, she has that like wildly curly hair.
Yeah, right. She gets super
Yeah,
curly later, like when Bagley and McFarlane are drawing her, but
yeah,
very straight here. Got the iconic red hair, you know.
of course.
I mean, that's just what else can you say? She looks great, and Peter is floored and infatuated, and
You
I
mean
was
that's Mary
surprised.
Jane?
And kind of transitioning over into issue 43 because obviously
Yep.
this carries over into it. I was very surprised, and I think we mentioned this either earlier on this episode or before we started recording, how we hadn't really read the first appearance of Mary Jane before. I was surprised how like she's pretty much immediately like flirting with him.
Oh yeah.
Like I thought they were kind of just like not interested at first, and then things kind of just happen, but they're flirting right away.
Yeah, they get into it in issue 30, issue 43, which is also the full return of Rhino.
Yep.
Amazing Spider-Man, Rhino on a Rampage.
The kind of part 3 of this story and the last issue for this episode. Major bullet points, just to sum it up before we kind of dive into our thoughts. Yeah, Rhino breaks out of jail again and goes on a rampage, trying to kind of lure Spider-Man out. Meanwhile, Peter's over with Mary Jane, talking to her, hitting it off with her before the Rhino appears on the television, and he's like, oh no, I have to go deal with that. And then he does, and that's basically the plot of the story. Interestingly, we've noticed a lot throughout the Spider-Man comics up until this point where, like, Peter trying to do things in his normal life gets interrupted by Spider-Man stuff. I felt like this was the one time he actually balanced it well.
It was pretty cool to see that change there. Instead of
Yeah.
him just be like, I gotta go, and the person being like, what the hell, man? Like, either you're weird, or you're a jerk, or something.
I totally thought that was what was about to happen when Rhino showed up on TV. I thought he was going to be like, oh man, I gotta go. And then MJ's going to be like, what a jerk. He just ran out on me. But
Yeah.
instead, she is like, hey, what if we went and saw the Rhino? And he's just like, all right, let's do that.
Yeah, let's do that. That's perfect. This is the perfect scenario for me.
I think it's a bit of foreshadowing that they're kind of perfect for each other.
Exactly. But she, right off the bat, is, as he describes, making everything feel like a party. Like, she turns music on, starts dancing, saying it's our song. Like, immediately is like, we're obviously not a couple, but like, this is you and me right now. You know what I mean?
She's the gal next door.
The big elephant in the room for me and you, which we mentioned before we started recording, was her dialogue.
Yeah. Other than the jackpot line, which is technically her first line of dialogue, we have such wonderful examples of language. As
see, let's just look at a couple. Let's see.
PDO, you're right from Groovesville.
What say we give the boob tube a whirl?
I never thought. Let me see. I never thought a tiger who wore his hair so short could be so dreamy, and you've got a bouncing bike too. Dad, you're the end.
You come on, strong son. And all this time, I was afraid you'd be the shy type.
Those crazy threads break me up. I was having a hard time, like, translating what she was saying while I was reading.
It was like
this.
a different language. It was interesting. But, I mean, she's the party girl. She's hip. She's with it. And that's how they wanted to get it across.
I really, like, I doubt anyone who was alive in the 60s is watching this video right now, but I really want someone to tell me, did people talk like this? Like,
it would be incredible.
I don't. It's fully another language, and I'm like, I know that, you know, the people who were in the 60s are alive now, hearing how people our age talk, and they're thinking that we talk crazy. So I get it's just a generational thing, but, like, Dad, you're the end. What does that mean?
Great. I bet Rhino's a real swinger. Come on now. She calls him a mad lad.
You're utterly mad, lad.
Very interesting, but yeah. So they zip away on Peter's what did she call a boob tube, and his motorcycle, and obviously we see a little scene with Matt Murdock and Foggy Nelson talking about how Foggy was ready to represent the Rhino, but he went and just escaped anyway. So whatever.
I do love how Matt is like, because when I saw Matt Murdock, I was like, oh, he's back in town. Maybe this will be a Daredevil crossover. I didn't know that. And Matt's just like, I wish Daredevil could go after the Rhino, but the web slinger deserves first crack at it. I'm like, do we have a superhero dibs system now? Like,
I think they just really wanted people to go read Daredevil.
yeah, I guess. But
I'm
then you
fine
would
with
think
that.
that they would have had Daredevil like fight. Like,
I love Daredevil. He's one of my favorite superheroes.
he's
So,
cool. He's cool.
I
I like
love
seeing
this
him.
character. Yeah,
Spider-Man and Daredevil are always a good combination.
100%. So Rhino's big thing in this issue is that Spider-Man was the one to do him in last time. He needs to get a crack at Spider-Man, and then once he's out of the way, he can go back to doing whatever he needs to do, aka getting John Jameson delivered where he needs to be delivered. We also get Rhino's origin story. Finally, he has a little flashback, and pretty much what you expect, kind of.
It's more of the usual.
Yeah.
Nothing
So
crazy.
he was just a big dumb idiot, pretty much, as the other painting him to be here. That was just kind of like, a paid thug, if you will.
Yeah.
And they finally said, "Hey, we'll pay you to do these experiments." And they're literally just talking right to him. They're like, "You're so like dumb that you're too dumb to betray us. You're also so dumb that you'll do anything for money, and that's exactly why we need you, just because you are so dumb." Like, that's literally how they are talking to this guy.
But then he's like, the experiments made me intelligent. But then he goes and is a super dumb super villain.
So he must have been so not smart.
Yeah.
But he looks like a Frankenstein type out of the suit. Very interesting.
Broad shoulders.
Broad shoulders. He's got like a bowl cut. Yeah, very Frankenstein.
He almost looks, if you look at the two panels that are above each other of him out of the suit and him in the suit, he almost looks skinnier in the suit.
He also kind of looks like the Hulk.
A little bit.
A little bit.
I don't know. I definitely, I mean, I love John Romita, but this early rendition of the Rhino, not the coolest looking guy. Like,
Not the cool. It's cool in terms of a nostalgia
of a concept and yeah, but like later renditions of Rhino make him just like really cool.
Yeah.
This is not one of those times.
So this is a molecule adhesive, which will be as much a part of you as a second skin. So it's a suit that is pretty much glued to this guy. It's attached to this guy, and it gives him the strength of a rhinoceros. And his first job that he got, he was like, okay, well, I am going to betray you guys because now I'm super smart because it's a rhinoceros costume. Everyone knows that. That's what happened.
Obviously.
And then he's like, well, I'm going to go and make a fortune. And obviously he goes and got the job to capture John Jameson. And then we switch back to Spider-Man and Rhino round 2.
I have a new favorite in this scene. A new favorite, like, non-main character line since this place is haunted.
Yeah,
which is
insane.
The bystander in the audience just going, if I was in charge, I'd toss an A-bomb at him from the roof. Which would just, like, level New York.
It would level New York. And the guy goes, if I was in charge, I'd drop an A-bomb on him. And the guy next to him goes, I guess that's why you're not in charge then, huh?
Which was so funny.
So random. Didn't need to be in there, but they put it in there. It was so perfect.
It's just in the bottom of the panel. It's just like, I'd toss an A-bomb at it. And he's like, yeah, I'm glad you're not in charge. It's so weird.
It's honestly so good. So they fight again. Rhino's faster this time around.
A little bit smarter.
A little bit smarter. He does get put into what looks like a trash can or just some random barrel. Breaks out of that. Some good fighting scenes. Obviously, those sound effects are there again.
Mm-hmm. Apparently, guns go crack when you shoot them.
Guns do go crack when you shoot them.
And
but they cannot. But they
bullets cannot pierce his hide. Yeah.
Bullets cannot pierce his hide. So Spider-Man is still moving at times faster than the Rhino. So the Rhino's like, "I'm gonna make you come to me," and so he charges into the crowd that is watching this all go down. So we also did so. Mary Jane and Spider-Man, or Peter Parker, go here to get a look at the Rhino. Spider-Man's like, all right, I'm going to tell her a part of the truth. I'm going to go take some pictures. You stay here. That's when he switches to Spidey. He ends up taking some pictures. Obviously, he webs up a camera with a 10-second interval, so it's snapping pictures every 10 seconds. But Rhino charges into the crowd where Mary Jane is, where the cops are, and so this is all taking place in front of Foswell, who is there on JJ's behalf to get some of this scoop, which happened a little early in the issue.
Right.
And this is when the final showdown goes down. Ends pretty quickly.
Spider-Man is saved by a cop.
Yes, Spider-Man's saved by a cop.
And he's walking out all Blue Lives Matter.
He's back in the blue.
He literally says, he's like, someone should make a book about the police.
The police, like, yeah. But, yeah, so Spider-Man cracks Rhino down, but Rhino gets up and just body slams this dude, like, hard. And so Spider-Man can't get up. There's a truck coming. Rhino gets distracted and, like, bodies the truck as the driver jumps out. And then the cop's like, I gotta go save this dude, Spider-Man. I gotta go save Spider-Man. He, like, times, the cop times his jump out of the way of the Rhino's charge when he turns back around and charges him. And Rhino's just like, and all the debris that comes down in the smoke, Rhino's like, oh yeah, I just killed Spider-Man. I'm not even gonna look back and look at what's going on. I'm getting out of here.
The classic, like, Scorpion did the same thing.
Yeah.
Just like, oh yeah,
didn't even check if they got him or not. Thank you, police. He gets out of there. Peter's got his pictures. He almost drops his camera. Talking to Mary Jane. That went over pretty smoothly. He's pretty smooth with her too. And makes a plan to see her tomorrow, which doesn't end up happening. But makes a plan to see her again tomorrow. And then he finds a piece of rhino hide in some of the debris. And he says this must be the way to beat him. So he brings it to none other than Dr. Connor.
Which, I did not even think about it when I was reading this issue. But Lizard comes back next issue.
Yeah, for 2 issues, yep.
And so I saw him show up, and I was like, oh, Kurt Connors, he's showing up out of nowhere. And then I didn't even think about the fact that he's setting up for the next story.
Right.
And there's even that moment where Kurt goes like, I wonder if the Lizard could stop Rhino. And Spider-Man's like, no, don't do it.
Not doing all that. So they make a gizmo together, which ends up being inside of his webbing. Rhino goes to try to get JJ's son again. Spider-Man has an inkling he would do that, so they meet up there as Rhino smashing through hospital bed where John Jameson is.
Which I gotta shout out that panel. We're talking about John Romita's art. This panel where Spider-Man is like jumping in the window, that's pretty just awesome. So well drawn. I don't know, the positioning that he's in, I think looks really good.
It's really awesome with Rhino in the background and the guns that will not pierce his hide.
Of course.
And he webs up Rhino. Rhino breaks the webs, but the webs never come off of him. They're sticking to him pretty well. And the webs with the gizmos in there end up melting the suit off of Rhino.
And another art shout out. I'm just looking at these pages and I'm remembering the panel where Rhino's crashing out of the building, where there's the red background, you have the lettering forming crash, and like the silhouette of Rhino popping out. That's just so good. You start to really see John Romita kind of flexing his art skills a little bit.
Yeah.
And then Rhino's naked.
Rhino's naked. Spider-Man calls him ugly.
The question is he stupid again?
Probably.
Yeah.
He might have always been stupid.
Maybe. I also...
Just a bump out along.
I did appreciate a little peek behind the scenes of this comic book when, at the end of page 19, Stan says, "We got so wrapped up in this yarn that we counted the pages wrong. We thought this would be the end, but now we see we've another page to go." And then there's just one more page with a heck of a lot of text on it.
I will say before that, I really, really like the panel where J. Jonah Jameson shows up to the hospital and is ranting about Spider-Man, Spider-Man's fault, and through the window, Spider-Man's like, saying bye to John Jameson. He's like, well, in a whisper bubble, well done, Webhead. And he's like, no sweat, Colonel.
Yeah,
I like
they're
that.
just
really
like they give him a little head nod, like, yeah, I got you.
You'll be the Man Wolf soon, but
Yeah, you just tried to attack me last issue, but
so I'm pretty sure it is the same suit, or like the same type of green and yellow type of suit.
I'm sure it'll be connected, yeah.
So that's gonna be cool to see. I'm excited about that. But yeah, we have a last page with a bunch of dialogue.
So much dialogue.
So first it's Gwen, Harry,
And
and
Flash. And we
Flash
find
is
out Flash is getting drafted.
getting drafted. They kind of make amends, Flash and Peter, but he's still kind of bullying him.
Is this so? I obviously know at some point in the Spider-Man comics, Flash is in the army. He loses his legs. That's like a whole arc, right? That doesn't happen like for a long time, right?
I have no. There's no way he loses his legs.
That's what I'm saying. Like that doesn't happen for a while, so I assume he serves a couple of times or something.
I feel like he would, go back.
Yeah, maybe because I saw he was drafted, and I was like, I knew he was gonna join the army, but this seems soon. Like, but Flash is getting drafted, so I guess he'll be popping out of the book for a little while, and then Peter's back to kind of giving Gwen the cold shoulder because I think he's more interested in Mary Jane right now.
It's gonna be interesting to see because obviously we know how that goes, where he ends up dating Gwen. Gwen definitely is looking more like I know Gwen.
She got the headband on.
She's got the headband on. She's got a softer face than she's been having.
Well,
a little bit, a little softer.
She's still scowling a little bit.
She's still scowling, but it's getting better, slowly but steadily.
Oh, and we end the comic with another wonderful Mary Jane line. When Peter says, "Oh, something came up. I can't make it tomorrow night." She says, "That's okay, Tiger. I'll keep a stiff upper lip till you buzz me again. Here."
So, does that mean she?
I have no idea.
Okay, I have no clue what that means, but does that mean that she won't shave her like upper lip?
No, like a stiff upper lip, like I don't know, like stiff is
Am
like
I looking
rigid.
way too deep into this? I don't know, because that's really funny if it's what I think it is.
I don't know, and I mean Peter says, "Oh, it sounds as though she couldn't care less," so I assume it's kind of like no sweat, I don't care, but like, I that is slang beyond my understanding.
I don't know. I thought about it in a comedic way, and I thought that you know what.
But yeah, he cancels the date with MJ because he's so stressed out about Aunt May and like finance, money and all that.
Yeah, she's sick again, but she didn't buy her medication because she probably has money. And he's like, "Well, I bought my new hot ride, and I'm so entranced with these girls." But that's how we end it.
Ending it on that classic Peter Parker note of like, why do I have such trouble managing my own life? It's like I can do all of these amazing things, I can fight these supervillains, but I can't balance my social relationships, which I think is part of that magic that makes Spider-Man so good. Is that like, they say that anyone can see themselves in the character because everyone struggles to balance their social relationships and their responsibilities and their finances. It's like you read that and you're like, yeah, if I was a superhero, I'd probably have that same problem too. So
yeah,
it definitely.
Suppose I have a problem now, and I'm not a superhero. So
exactly, I'm like, man, I wish I was a superhero, then I could do that. But
I love it. It's amazing. It's relatable.
Great couple of issues.
Great couple issues.
If I had to rank the three of them, I'd say 42 is my favorite.
I got that.
43 is probably my second favorite, and 41's my last. I like them all. They're all like, they're definitely not like bottom tier issues that we've read so far. But 41 was definitely the weakest one. It was kind of just setting up the story, and then 43 was kind of closing out the story. But I feel like 42 was that kind of surprise highlight in the middle there. I don't know. It really could go anyway between 42 and 43 because I do enjoy Mary Jane's like element in 43.
I had a lot of fun with 43. I'm going to say 43, 42, 41. Yeah. I'll be predictable. I just think Mary Jane carried 43 for me, personally.
Yeah.
It rose a little higher than 42.
Yeah, I might change my answer. I might say 43, 42, 41.
So I nailed that because I said 42, 43, 41. I said, by the end of it, it'll be 43. 42.
Yeah.
So I nailed that.
Just with Mary Jane and everything, it's like, you gotta.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And we didn't do rankings each issue. Forgot to do that. So let's just say, what's your ranking for these 3 issues altogether?
Altogether, 7.5 out of 10.
I would say about 7.5.
Yeah. Like, not quite a 7, but not quite an 8. Like, it's...
The whole Mary Jane, Gwen, Betty carried these books.
That's like I said. Like, Rhino, he's cool, JJ, but whatever. But, like, the soap opera element of, like, the romances and the social relationships and all of that is what made these, like, really interesting for me. But, yeah, that pretty much wraps it up. I think we went a little bit over 45 minutes, but, there's just a lot to talk about in these comic books.
Yeah.
But
think,
next episode, I'm looking here, and I think it makes sense for us to dive into another 3 issues. So we will be doing 44, 45, and 46, which will feature the return of the Lizard, which was foreshadowed here, and the first appearance of Shocker.
Very excited for that.
A villain that you either love him or hate him. Maybe like a C-list villain, I think is fair to say.
Yeah.
So Sony will be making a movie for him any day now.
He'll be a hero.
And before we close out here, I do gotta make one shout out. Obviously, anyone who's watching this podcast probably went and saw Across the Spider-Verse, Spider-Man. I don't know if you noticed, but there were multiple water towers in that movie.
I did not notice one water tower. I have to go back to the theaters.
There were multiple water towers, and before I went to see that in theaters, I rewatched Into the Spider-Verse, and at one point, at the end, when they're in the particle collider and there's like all the dimensional stuff, like there's like buildings and buses and things floating around, I kid you not, if you watch closely, a water tower floats by in the background.
So obviously, if you watch the first 8 episodes, the water towers were a big character.
Water towers are the most frequent side character in Spider-Man comics.
Had not had an episode in 10 months, but every classic water tower I saw, I sent a picture to this man.
Yeah, no, like
I was in New York City a couple months ago, and saw as I was walking in Manhattan, an old time water tower, just like in the comics. And I took a picture of it, and I was like, I'm living it. I'm him.
And I noticed it in Into the Spider-Verse, and then I saw it in Across the Spider-Verse, and I knew I had to mention it here because we have had many conversations about the prevalence of water towers in the Spider-Man comics, and they are featured in the Spider-Verse movies, arguably the best.
And they're real. They're still around today. You go to New York.
You can
open your eyes a little. You'll find a water tower.
You can peek into the Marvel universe yourself.
You can see Scorpion just smashing right through one of those.
Yeah, or Vulture throwing him into one.
Yeah, exactly.
Or when else has he been near a water tower?
All the time.
All the time.
He loves his water tower.
But yeah, any closing thoughts? Any It's been 10 months, so was there anything that you thought of that you wanted to mention?
I'm very excited for the coming issues. I think it's going to be very interesting run here from, I think, now to 100.
The John Romita era, we're about to get into, like, obviously the return of Lizard, First Prince Shocker, Kraven and Vulture come back, then we get into Kingpin.
And then we get Doc Ock again.
Like, there is a lot, like, banger after banger coming, so you don't want to miss it. So if you are new here, this is a podcast that we ideally do every week. Obviously, it's been 10 months. This is just a hobby, you know. We're trying out here. We're trying
our best.
But so hit that subscribe button, or, you know, head on over to Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, wherever the big places you listen to podcasts. You can follow us there. Leave a 5-star review, of course. If they still do that, I don't even know. I
think they do. Go ahead, give us a review.
And tell your friends.
Yeah, tell your friends, tell your mom.
Tell your barber. JP told his physical therapist about
physical therapist
podcast. So, you know, next time you're at the dentist, just be like, "Hey, you ever heard of Webheads Comic Club?"
Oh, they love talking to you when you have every tool in existence in your mouth. Just start blabbing on about Webheads.
Yeah, just let them know. Just say, "Hey, I saw this podcast. They're reading every Spider-Man comic ever made."
Now there may be 10 months in between each episode, but I tell you, it's gonna be.
They're not the most consistent podcast.
I hope we have a string of 10 months from here on out where we do the podcast.
Yeah. And think about it. If we hadn't gone on that 10-month hiatus and had done an episode every week, we'd probably be at, like, Black Cat by now.
That's crazy.
We'd be pretty far. Gwen Stacy would definitely be dead.
Oh, Gwen Stacy would be 6 feet under, bro.
Yeah. So stick with us as we get there. Yeah, socials are on the screen there. Obviously, you can see. Go follow him on Instagram, YouTube. I think I have TikTok, Twitter, and everything else on there.
Is it funnier if we don't mention the giant Squidward in the background?
What Squidward?
You're right. It blends to the walls pretty well. $10 on Amazon. One of my best purchases ever made. Great quality, honestly.
Yeah, I have my. I was mentioning right before we started recording. The last episode was 10 months ago, and I think my hair was like here, and and I had like 4 comics here, so there's been some changes since then, but hopefully we'll see you guys again soon. Thank you for watching.
Peace.